I want to bring in Liz Wall. She's a journalist and former anchor at Russia Today. Good to see you, Liz. So do you see on the horizon that Putin would meet with the Turkish leader, or will he continue to give him the cold shoulder?
Well, based on his actions right now, it looks like he is not really very warm to a possible meeting with the Turkish leader. It seems like he really does want an apology. From what we've seen with Putin's actions so far, he really does portray this role of a strongman, and he really wants to portray that projection of power. And I think it's not really in his nature to back down, and it seems like an apology really is what he's searching for. It doesn't look like that's what he's going to get. So even with the Turkish president, you know, trying to show a gesture of wanting to talk at the climate summit, I could see a possible snub from Putin the way things are going right now.
And at the same time, is there a feeling from, say, perhaps it's Russia's point of view, that there is some need of cooperation with Turkey, given that Turkey stands right in between, you know, that flight route to Syria? So, you know, for how long can, I guess, talks between Turkey and Russia or some sort of arrangement go on?
Right. Well, I think I always say, with my experience, the headlines and the rhetoric coming out of the Kremlin and Russian media can be indicative of what we can expect. And right now what we're seeing is some really, really strong and heightened rhetoric coming out of Russian media. We hear from the Kremlin saying that Turkey is an accomplice to terrorism. A top Russian official had hinted that Turkey is actually buying oil from ISIS, which is unsubstantiated, and the Turkish president had fired back at that. So we're seeing, and you got to think that this obviously this is a very, very serious incident, the shooting down of the jet. But for years now, this kind of anti-NATO climate has been really ramped up in Russian media. So I mean, for a long time now, there's been this kind of climate of fear against NATO and against Western powers, portraying NATO as the aggressor, and as Russia kind of being in this position as needing to defend its borders. So I think, unfortunately, I think this kind of underscores this greater, I guess, issue or possibility of Russia being able to work in coalition with NATO to defend ISIS. And this is kind of just another roadblock in what hopefully Hollande met with both leaders in the U.S. and with Russia. It seems like a possibility of a coalition against ISIS is becoming less feasible as these events unfold.
And then, Liz, I wonder if, I mean, is there a simple explanation as to what's behind Vladimir Putin's allegiance to Bashar al-Assad?
Well, I think it has to do with, well, it's interesting because when he had first intervened in Syria, it kind of raised eyebrows. What exactly were his intentions there? Well, I think one of those is to distract from what was going on in Ukraine, which is essentially a frozen conflict right now. I just came back from the Baltic states, and there's widespread fear there that people are forgetting what's happening in Ukraine and the greater implications of that. And if that was one of the goals, certainly that's helped because everyone's talking about Syria now and not Ukraine. So there's that. And then also there's this idea, I mean, Bashar al-Assad is his ally. And so it enables him to prop up one of his only supporters and allies in the Middle East, and also to have a say and some power over the future of Syria. And we're seeing it in many theaters, in many aspects, Putin trying to insert himself into the geopolitical stage right now.
All right, all good information. Thank you so much, Liz Wall.
Thanks, Frederica.
Good to see you.
Thanks.